Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies. I'm your host, Brent, the weatherman. Settle in and get ready for a conversation with our topic of today. Well, we welcome Jennifer Evans. Welcome back to the show for another excellent packed segment.
Thank you so much, Brent. It's great to be here. Hello, Neil, and everybody else who's here. So, are there any sort of introductory remarks you guys want to make, or should we?
Actually, I'd like to know about that new chart that just came out, where Canada stands on. Well, I guess through the G7, where we stand on economically around the world.
Yes, absolutely. Give you some insight into that. So, has everybody actually seen the chart? First of all, Brent, I don't know if you can pull it up in your feed, but that would, I think, probably be useful.
Yeah, I think we're behind Korea, right? And like only 4 other countries or something like that.
That's right. We are not well placed, and that's an understatement. The chart, I think, has about 30 countries on it. There's some missing. But even in that, it's primarily wealthy Western countries. But even in that environment, we are ahead of, as you pointed out, very few countries. I think Mexico is the worst performer, and we're maybe 5 or 6 spots above Mexico. We're behind the United States, not exactly renowned for its investments in social spending. And this is one of the reasons why the UN has commented on the way that Canada has been treating people with disabilities. I also think, frankly, it's the primary driver of why the federal disability benefit was even conceived of or introduced. Because it's embarrassing, obviously. You know, one of the things that we talk about as Canadians is our social safety net. And I think, as many of us have been finding out over the past couple of years, the social safety net is a little bit of a myth. So the federal government has been investing heavily, as we've all seen, in really starting to build that back out with the daycare plan, which is going to be a tremendous benefit to people with disabilities and the rest of the country as well. This is going to be really a huge change and a huge benefit to parents. So that will change a lot of things for a lot of people. The pharmacare and the what am I blanking on? Pharmacare and dental. Thank you. Will also obviously have an impact. But as we all know, the main issue and crisis that people with disabilities are experiencing in Canada, people in particular who are dependent on government benefits, is that the benefits have not moved in 20 years. So that is why, provincially, that is why we're at the bottom, and that is why the federal disability benefit is being introduced and should be coming. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on the chart, if you've been able to see it, but if we haven't been able to pull it up yet, I can take a look for it and post it to my feed. And I don't know if there are any questions at all, or if people would like some additional commentary on kind of where we sit, but happy to do either.
The chart definitely positions Canada not in a good spot. It actually is quite embarrassing, really, especially when we are such a wealthy country in the G7. Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's been neglected for decades and decades, right? There's no reason why a social safety net cannot benefit all Canadians. I mean, especially people with disabilities, right? I mean, seniors, low-income people, you name it, because there's so many patchwork systems in Canada right now, and all it has to be done is just branch it all together with a GLBI or the Canada Disability Benefit for Canadians with disabilities for sure.
Yeah.
But like a GLBI for everybody else, where it gets paid for by just taxing the multimillionaires, but there's always excuses of the government's not wanting to do it. Well, I mean, that's another issue in itself for sure. But I mean, it needs to be done, right? I mean,
absolutely, and
yeah,
it needs to be done 100%. It is inexcusable where the benefits sit right now. I think I saw somebody saying that they're in 2001, the benefits were essentially the same amount as they are now in Ontario, and that is obviously the case across most of the country as well. And there's so much conversation, Brent, about the GLBI and about basic income, and it's clear that this is not something that the federal government is going to be entertaining, at least in this government, over the next 3 years. I don't think we're going to see a GLBI introduced, but I do think what we're going to see is provincially, the Ontario Liberals have committed to restarting the pilot, which is unfortunate. I think all of us would like to see it expanded, but at least it's not going to be discontinued as it is right now. I know that there are some people in the disabled community who were on that basic income pilot and found it really, really helpful to their lives. Mm-hmm. So that's something that we would love to see. The other thing is that, with all these benefits, with the child benefit, with pharmacare and dental care, with the daycare, with the coming federal disability benefit, we're getting to a point now where all of these benefits together start to become and look like a guaranteed livable basic income. So I think, there's some possibility that as we move through the next few years and past this government, and hopefully not into a situation where we have a very fiscally conservative prime minister next, because that would obviously put an end to anything like an expansion of this, and possibly to the federal disability benefit itself. So this is something that's critical to take place in the next 3 years. And if we do see that it becomes more economically beneficial, if it's more efficient to actually wrap this all up into one guaranteed livable basic income, that may be something that the government does. And, the discussion at this point is about who actually should get the basic income. Is it everybody? Is it just specific groups? Is it people below the poverty line? Like, what's the point of this whole thing? And so there's a lot of discussion sort of in the community, in government, and in governments around the world about what this is going to look like, just because of employment trends and what we're seeing in terms of where the world is going post-pandemic. It's not very clear employment trends. It's not really clear where the economy is going. So for people to have any sort of security, this is something that is going to be necessary.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know Brent and I were talking off air just yesterday, actually, and we were talking, or at least I was mentioning, like, my opinion is that I think the GLBI is probably going to die because I don't see the federal Liberals supporting it. But at the same time, that's just my opinion. And at the same time, I do think all these acts for the GLBI are important because they do help. Everything helps to raise the profile, right? So even if it dies, all these discussions are helping to raise the profile. So I don't think it's a bunch of wasted effort. I don't think everybody should be going, oh man, I hope it doesn't die or whatever, because it's still helping to raise the profile. So I do think at the end of the day, all of this discussion is important, and it's raising the profile. It's helping to, increase advocacy for the PWD and all that's a really positive thing. So
agreed. And there are some really interesting employment trends happening. And the reality is, if we move into automated trucking and autonomous vehicles and self-checkouts, we're eliminating a tremendous number of jobs. It may be more cost efficient for companies like Loblaws and Shoppers, and any of you who've been to a Loblaws or Shoppers recently will know that self-checkout is becoming the way that these companies are now operating. So what are the implications for people who, are typical minimum wage workers? There really isn't an option. At a certain point, if people are, at sort of the low end of the skill spectrum, not able to qualify for jobs because they're being eliminated by automation or by digital technologies, those people still need to live. And so I think what we're going to see as this trend towards digitization happens, the pressure on the minimum wage type of employment is going to be considerable, and that's got to be obvious to governments. They know that that's coming, and so people need to start planning, I think, for what that future is going to look like. I think we're, as you said, Neil, we're very unlikely to see a GLBI in the next 3 years. But I think in the next 10 years, I don't know how society is going to function without it. So putting the pressure on, being very clear about what we're looking for out of the GLBI, those are going to be really important, because at a certain point, the consultations are going to start about that. And the more prepared we are to talk about it, the better the outcome will be for disabled people in the end.
I think, having, like Neil mentioned, all the components put in, like from the GLBI, and when they develop the CDB, they'll have all those components in there moving forward. Yeah, I agree. I don't see at this point, the GLBI going forward. I mean, I hope it does, but in reality, it seems like it won't go through in time. I mean, hopefully there's not an election beforehand, right? I mean, that's all we need. Yeah, I think that it's gonna take a lot of work. But in the meantime, like an intern amount is basically what I'm hearing on the streets and around everywhere. People reaching out, as you know, Jennifer, they're constantly reaching out, help, right? And
yes,
I mean, including myself, and it's because it's hard.
Everybody.
Because
So
the buying power isn't there. Like, it just erodes away, and then
exactly.
you get your check in, and boom, it's gone, like, or almost gone, right? And so having an intern amount, and it just shows on the federal government's behalf, like, yeah, like, we're actually trying. We actually, we want to show that, yeah, we mean it, but we're going to take some time to work on what we need to do, the framework, right? But with them ignoring it, or saying, yeah, we'll deal with it down the road, it's not a priority right now. Well, taking care of their citizens is a priority, and it should be anyway. I mean, that's what I would think.
Absolutely. And I think you're probably all aware that the federal budget is coming out on April the 7th.
Right.
So we're going to see very clearly what the plans are. And I think we need to be ready if there is nothing for the disability benefit in the budget this year. We need to really be prepared to put a pretty substantial campaign on, because that obviously is going to leave people in a very difficult position for the next 24 months.
Again, talking about spending, I brought up the actual table of the Tyler Stacks table.
Perfect.
And I've got it here. It's Canada's spending is 0.7%, and Canada is only behind Mexico is number 1, Costa Rica is number 2, Colombia is number 3, Turkey is number 4, Korea is number 5, and then Canada. And
so those are the lowest spenders, which is
those are the lowest.
So embarrassing. Yeah,
it is embarrassing. Yeah, and then the only ones ahead of Canada are Chile and then United States. So the United States is only just barely ahead of Canada too. So
yes, which we should never ever be behind the United States on social spending ever.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
the fact that we are is just, it's terrible.
It's mind-boggling.